Good day everyone. Today's video, I'm going to discuss the chapter 4, which is the theories of global stratification. The first theory of global stratification is the class space and its developmental acceptance to the society. So ano nga ba ito? According sa mga professionals natin, ang word na class ay maiugnay sa concept ng kanilang napiling field of specialization. Pero sa iba naman, ang salitang class ay kahintulad ng salitang social class na kasing kahulugan ng salitang socio-economic class. Ang socio, in Latin word, is known as kasama or kakampi. Also, class can be referred as working class or pwede ring socio-economic class or pwede ding mga taong may pagkakaparehas socially, economically, culturally, politically, or relate sila sa kanilang status with their education. Ito rin ay matatawag na emerging professional class. Under academic concepts, ang social class ay kapag ang isa ay merong stable na socio-cultural na background. Pero ang socio-economic status ay kung saan ang social at economic situation ng isa ay nagbabago as time passes by. Second theory of global stratification is the social classes according to Karl Marx, the root of social class level. But before expounding this, let us know who is Karl Marx. Karl Marx is a German economist, historian, political theorist, sociologist, journalist, revolutionary socialist, and a philosopher. He believed that it is more on the class relationship to production. So, ang example nito ay ang proletariat na nag-work pero hindi nila own ang means of production. At saka, ang mga bourgeois naman, ito ay ang mga buhay ng pamilya na nag-e-enjoy sa surplus na generated ng mga operation of means of production na mga proletariats. Sumunod naman ay si Max Weber. He is a sociologist and argued na ang class ay madedetermine by economic position at ang social status or stand ay ang social prestige or relations of production. Para sa kanya, ang class ay ginagamit ng census takers para mas makategorize ang mga citizens according sa wealth nila para ma-determine ang military service obligations. Noong 18th century, the term class ay nagsimula na palitan ang classifications katulad ng states, ranks, and orders bilang primary means ng pag-organize ng society sa isang hierarchical divisions. Ang social class naman sa concepts of social sciences and political theory gamit ang models of social stratification ay isang set ng mga tao sa isang hierarchical social categories. This could be referred as upper, middle, and lower classes. There are criteria for basic distinctions of one class from another class. First is the ownership of means of production and the control of labor power of others. Katulad nga ng sabi ni Marx, society as a whole is more and more splitting up into two great hostile camps, into two great classes directly facing each other. Meron naman tayong tinatawag na capitalist or bourgeois. There are the few people who owns the big capital and utilizes the labor powers of the poor. Sumunod naman ang mga workers or proletariats. Sila yung mga may kakayahang mag-produce ng mas maraming products for the benefits ng mga capitalist pero hindi nila inaangkin ang kanilang na-produce. Instead, binebenta nila ito. Next is, there is what we call Manifesto of the Communist Party. In here, they describe two additional classes that decay and finally disappear in the face of modern industry. Under dito ang transitional class at ang dangerous class or lumpen proletariat. Ang transitional class ay ang mga petit bourgeois na mayroong sariling means ng productions pero hindi bumibili ng labor power. Ang dangerous class naman are social scum that is passively rooting mass thrown off by the lowest layers of the old society. But, ano nga ba ang global stratification? Ang global stratification ay ang mga iba't ibang hierarchical arrangement ng mga individuals o groups sa society sa buong mundo. Ito ay madedetermine ng social inequality na concerning ang distribution ng mga resources sa groups na based sa kanilang position sa social hierarchy. Next, let's discuss the stratification and inequality. In here, a person's social economic status ay nadedetermine by their income, occupational prestige, wealth, and educational attainment. Itong mga to ay ang kinukonsider sa kanilang social economic status. It is true that the most potent country sustains power, property, and prestige of political, economic, sociological power, and even in individual discipline. Ang oppression in the world ay magkukontinue lang if each vested interest of all statuses is still practiced by those who are fortunate in life. Simula pa noong 2008, ang yaman ng mga mayayaman na 1% and it has been growing at 6% every year, much faster than 3% of growth sa wealth of the remaining 99%. There are three reasons why richest countries continue to be on top. First, higher rates of saving among the wealthy. Second, accumulation of assets. Third, invested a large amount of equity in businesses, stocks, and other financial assets, which have handed them these fortunate benefits. So, makikita natin dito na kaya pala mas lalo silang lumayaman or continue ang kanilang yaman because they know how to use their money. Next, there is three standpoints towards stratification. First is the micro level. This micro level is more on focus sa prestige or personal influence na nag-create ng inequality sa face-to-face or interaction sa mga maliliit na group. Second is the meso level. This is more on how connections to organizations and institutions produce inequality. Third is the macro-level analysis. This considers the rules ng economic system sa pagbuo ng resources and opportunities ng mga individuals. Dito sa macro-level analysis of stratification in a wide perspective ay ang relationship ng nations globally pertaining sa International Economic System or ang TES. Ito ay naglilid sa unequal redundancy ng distributions ng mga resources ng mga taong nakatira sa iba't ibang nations. The third theories is the theories of macro-level inequality. There are three dominant theories that sociologists use to consider why inequality exists on a global scale. Una ay ang theory of development and modernization. Itong theory na to, sinasabi na ang mga poor nations ay mananatiling mahirap kasi they hold onto traditional attitudes and beliefs, technologies, institutions. Sa theory na ito ay naniniwala na ang large economic growth ay ang mga sagot para mabawasan ang kahirapan sa mga developing countries. Second is the dependency theory. These theories blames colonialism and neocolonialism for global poverty. So, na-develop na mga countries ang uneven rate dahil sa mga wealthy countries na ine-exploit ang developing countries noon at hanggang ngayon sa mga utang and transitional corporation. Third theory ay ang world system theory. Itong theory na to ay sinasuggest na lahat ng countries ay nahahati sa tatlong tier hierarchy na based sa kanilang relationships, global economy, and ang posisyon ng bansang ito sa hierarchy ang nagdedetermine ng kanilang economic development. This theory is articulated by sociologist Immanuel Wallerstein, kung saan ang core countries ay laging nasa itaas ng global hierarchy as they can extract material resources and labor sa mga less developed countries. Dahil dito, individuals living in these countries have higher standards ng pamumuhay than those in semi-peripheral and peripheral countries. Next, what is the meaning of global stratification? First, let us know what is social stratification is. Ito yung classification where people are ranked and evaluate each other as higher end. By evaluations, inequality rewarded one another with wealth, authority, influence, and status. Then, global social stratification is the hierarchical arrangement and organizations ng mga categories ay nagdevelop into social group kasama ang kanilang status and rules. Ang result ng discrimination na ito ay ang formation ng ibang levels sa society. These numbers of levels sa society ay maa-identify gamit ang mga social classes or groups ng tao na nag-share sa isang same position or status. Here in the Philippines, we have three social classes: the upper class, middle class, and the lower class. The upper class is yung mga set of people that has high personal income, yaman, and economic influence. Ang middle class naman ay yung mga small businesses, teachers, merchants, and traders na may sapat na income. Lastly, we have the lower class. Dito yung mga groups of people na may mababang sweldo or walang ipon, and yung mga iba dito is mga walang trabaho. Next, let us now differentiate industrializing sa less developed. Ang term na industrializing country ay complex and misleader. This implies na ang economy is isang bansa ay nag-grow pa. Some are stagnant or in decline. The fourth theory of global stratification is Immanuel Maurice Wallerstein. Siya ay isang sociologist na kilala sa kanyang development of world system theory. Ito ay study of social change sa context ng global system ng nations. Ang kanyang career o nagsimula noong siya ay naging instructor sa Columbia University at nagsunod-sunod na ito. Lumipat siya sa McGill University sa Montreal at naging isang professor sa sociology. Sumali siya sa State University of New York noong 1976 at naging professor sa sociology. He maintains that a new form of Western colonialism, neocolonialism, ay ginugusto ng karamihan ng United States and multinational corporations ay binago ang mga lumang reforms ng colonial domination na mayroong mahabang domination na achieved through the economic and political means. Then let's move on, modern world system analysis. This is formulated by Immanuel Wallerstein. This is a grand narrative of world historical development from the 16th century to the present, with boundaries, structures, member groups, rules of legitimation, and coherence. Dinefine ni Immanuel Kant ang world system na isang geographical division ng labor kung saan ang basic linkage is ang economic. Ang system is reinforced ng political and cultural factors. Let's go now sa the tripartite world system. Ito din ay gawa ni Wallerstein, where he divides the nations and areas ng world sa three units: core, peripheral, and semi-peripheral. Let's define core nations. Ito yung nations na historically dominated yung economic structure and still striving para ma-maintain ang dominance and trying to expound authority sa world. Ang mga mayayaman na bansa ay nagpo-produce at nagdi-distribute ng mga product. Second is the peripheral areas or nations. Ito naman ay ang mga nations na nagpo-provide ng agricultural products, luxury of goods, raw material, and mayroong cheap sources of labor. This serves as the geographically located post para maprotektahan ang trade routes sa gitna ng core and peripheral. Third is the semi-peripheral nations. Ito naman ay ang mga areas na nagsaserve as intermediary trading areas sa gitna ng core nations and peripheral areas. These small manufacturing sectors are geared for both local and international trade and some capital accumulation. So, the closer examination of the three components ng world system ay nagre-reveal ng complexity ng analytical framework. In-identify ni Wallerstein ang core, peripheral, and semi-peripheral as a relation concept. Ang world system analysis stresses ang dynamic interaction at pagbabago. Core nations ay pwedeng semi-peripheral or even peripheral nation. So example history is the dynamic competition of core nations para sa advantage sa world system lalo na sa economy, political, cultural, and minsan military. In-identify ni Wallerstein ang iba't ibang struggles sa gitna ng core nations at nag-result sa warfare reverberating sa mundo. Ang semi-peripheral area naman ay nagbabago at umaangat sa pagtagal ng panahon sa core status. Sa Atlantic North America, ang colonies ay nagde-develop sa external or pre-Columbian period to peripheral or 15th to 17th centuries. Their peripheral and semi-peripheral areas ay hindi passive participants sa system. Minsan, gumagawa sila ng paraan para tumaas ang kanilang status and often rebel na minsan nagiging successful. Example of this is, during the late 18th century, Spanish diplomacy toward the rebelling British colonies ay nahuli sa kanilang gustuhin na mabuhay ang power ng England at ang takot ng colonial rebellion na magseset sa president ng mga colonies ng Spain. Let us now go to hegemony. Wallerstein refers this word to the situations in one static which is pinagsama ang economic, political, and financial superiority over sa mga malalakas na states and both military and cultural, pati na rin ang economic and political power. Superior means of production and distribution, strong financial institutions na nagbibigay ng credit sa both domestic and external industry sa peripheral and semi-peripheral areas. Ang financial powers para masupport ang military action at ang hegemon ang nagdominate ng world system. There are three periods of hegemonic domination in the modern world. Una is ang United Provinces sa Netherlands noong 17th century. Pangalawa is ang Great Britain noong middle 19th century. At ang pangatlo is ang United States noong middle 20th century. For the scholarly precursor emerged between 1945 to 1970, the world system analysis arose noong 1970 ay sinulat ni Immanuel Wallerstein. Ang mga intellectual antecedents ay nagsimula between 1945 and 1970 sa pag-promulgate ang pagtaas ng world system theory. Una dito ay ang study ng Latin American history, contemporary politics and foreign relations that arose the conceptualizations ng core and dependency theory. Next, we have the Martian idea of Asiatic mode of production. Third is the historical debate patungkol sa transition ng feudalism sa capitalism. Pang-apat naman ay ang scholarship ni Fernand Braudel and ang Annales School ng Historiography. Ang study ng Latin American history, contemporary politics, and foreign relations that arose the conceptualizations ng core and dependency theory ay ang effort ng Latin American scholars sa paggawa para mas maintindihan ang economic and social structures ng kanilang regions and ang kanilang relationship sa United States. Ang tinatawag na Martian idea ng Asiatic mode of production stresses the role ng mga malalaking bureaucratic at autocratic empires sa world system. Merong nagkaroon ng historical debate patungkol sa transition ng feudalism sa capitalism. Ang contribution sa world system theory ay nagsilbing debate sa timing and nature ng pag-transition from feudalism hanggang capitalism. Ang scholarship ni Fernand Braudel at ang Annales School ng Historiography, Wallerstein pointed that he admires the scholarship of Fernand Braudel and Annales School of Scholars. Pertaining to the incorporations ng buong mundo, Wallerstein appropriated the theory of the Kondratiev wave para ma-explain ang economic fluctuations sa world system. We have colonialism. Colonialism is a form of interstate relationship within the capitalist world system. Ito ay nag-emerge as political method ng incorporations ng external areas. Meron tayong tinatawag na triangular trade routes reasons ng colonialism. Ang colonies ay nag-serve as way stations for commerce on the trade routes na nag-link ng world system and as bases para maprotektahan ang trade routes or disrupt the commerce of rival core powers. Ang incorporation into the world system induced ang pagbabago sa economic and even cultural patterns of the peripheral and colonial areas. Ang colonialism ay may malaking nakuhang forms between the 16th and the 20th centuries, mula settler colonies hanggang sa political control by ng malit na group of core citizens over a large native population. Ang competition between sa core powers to consolidate areas external to the world system was the catalyst to colonialism. Ang hirap sa gitna ng core powers at ang attempt para ma-maintain ang balance ng power nang hindi nagagamit ang kahit anong power-achieving hegemony ay nag-result sa war sa kontinent ng Europe. Ang wars na iyon ay nag-spread sa mga colonies. Treaties terminating such conflicts reflected the significance of the world system. The Treaty of Utrecht of 1713, for example, which is nagtapos ng War of the Spanish Succession at nagbigay sa England ng access sa slave trade dominated by the Spanish. Noong middle of the 18th century, ang mga policy makers in the major European core nations, England, France, Spain, and the Netherlands, realized na ang conflict sa peripheral colonial areas ay kasing importante sa pag-maintain ng balance of power within the world system as wars on the continent. Na-trace ni Wallerstein ang colonization ng Mughal Empire na namuno sa Indian subcontinent noong 16th century and 17th centuries. Ang decision nila ay ang i-incorporate ang India as part ng British Empire para ma-illustrate ang dynamics ng globalization ng world system at ang conflict sa gitna ng core powers. Contributing sa desisyon ng Britain ay ang pag-colonize as competition sa France na nakakakuha ng yaman ng India. Sa world system analysis, colonies are not passive participants. In virtually every colony, anti-systematic forces disputed colonial status. Ang mga responses ay nag-range from petition to revolution and warfare. Simula ng British North American colonies and the Spanish and French colonial empires in the late 18th and early 19th centuries, anti-colonialism gained momentum. Noong late 19th century, ang tinatawag na anti-colonial rebellions ay nangyari sa buong mundo. At noong 20th century, na-realize ng core nations na ang cost ng colonialism ay mas importante kaysa sa mga advantages. Noong 21st century, ang formal colonialism ay naging essential relic ng history. Habang ang ibang colonists rebelled against colonial status, karamihan naman ay hindi ni-reject ang basic structure of the capitalist world system. Ang mga core nations ay nagkahanap ng bagong methods of controlling the economics of the newly independent nations in the periphery and semi-periphery. Ang economic coercion and military intervention ang mga sakop ng methods na ito. So that's it for my presentation. Thank you so much for listening and I hope na may natutunan kayo sa topic na diniscuss ko, ang Chapter 4, Theories of Global Stratification.